We got an email this week that we both... Carl was nearly crying when he seen this email. I showed him it, and I want to read it out because, like I say, I don't know what's for the best. I don't know whether it's best to open everything up like Sweden did, take the whole virus on the chin. You know, unfortunately, that means people are going to get sick, or to lock down completely and try and wait for a vaccine or whatever. I don't know what the best thing to do is. I don't. But if I can see, and I'm a 28-year-old fucking idiot who doesn't look into anything, but if I can see a glaring problem with the government's approach to it, why the fuck can't they? There's problems there that no one's addressing, and this is one of them. We got an email from a lad, and he's given us permission to read this out on the podcast. It's the only reason we're doing it. We're not going to name him. So... we got this email on the 21st of September after a recent episode where I spoke about how the government don't seem to be looking at the fact that mental health is going to be affected by a second lockdown, and there's been nothing put in place to protect people's mental health if they're on a second lockdown, especially people who are alone as well. And I don't think this lad is alone, but I'm going to be alone now. If there's a second lockdown, I'll be locked up on my own. Me bird's gone, me dog's gone. And again, it's for the right reasons, and it's a good move. But that doesn't
feel very lonely in a busy house though, can't you? That's being alone is a state of mind as well. Fuck's sake.
Hey, so this is the email. Hey, so what's happening, lids? Basically, I was just listening to the latest episode of the podcast and hearing your opinions on the effect that another lockdown could have on someone's mental health. And it made me think about the way it affected me as a person and the severe toll it took on my mental health. To be honest, thinking about it, the two good things I had during shutdown, I've got to stick with the shutdown, Brandon. So Dan's had a lot of shit for calling it a shutdown and not a lockdown, and Dave's leading into that. I need to bleep his name.
It's a better explanation of what it was. It wasn't a lockdown, it was a shutdown.
During lockdown was my relationship with my girlfriend, which to be honest was rocky at the worst of times during the shutdown. And the second thing being this podcast. The daily uploads was something to me to look forward to each and every day. And having my have a words answered gave me a little serotonin boost. We're very happy that we could help you in a small way. I've never personally met any of you two, but due to the podcast, I honestly feel like you two are just two of me mates. Like I know more about you than two fuckers. I know more about you two fuckers than I do about most people I know. And I feel like being a listener to this podcast is like being part of some fucked up club. During lockdown, my mental health deteriorated quite drastically until the 28th of May. I attempted to take my own life in the middle of King Edward Street by the Liverpool Echo's building. So King Edward Street is in Liverpool city centre. It's where they print the Liverpool Echo. I was at my lowest, and I'm still fairly low, but I feel myself getting better slowly but surely. I've been on mental health leave for a long period of time due to the panic attacks that come with the thought of work. And I'm just saying, I've still been paying £10 a month for that Patreon, boys. So this guy is being laid off from work, and he's still giving us £10 a month. So what a ledge. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the shutdown affected me to an extent where I didn't want to live a life that I actually enjoy. I'm a 17-year-old. A 17-year-old who before lockdown was a sociable person, but since lockdown, the thought of interacting with people fills me with fear and panic, and it's made the thought of day-to-day life that I lived before lockdown seem so far from what I'm capable of right now. So if another lockdown did happen, nothing much for me would change due to me still having self-shut down for me to improve my mental health. But then for other people that are back to living their normal lives, who barely made it through the initial shutdown, the expected second lockdown will affect people and probably kill a lot more people off than that fucking COVID could ever do. But them Tory cunts who are so fucking incapable of running this country don't fucking think about this stuff until it's too fucking late. So when it eventually gets to the point where the nation is back to the second shutdown and the percentage of suicide rises, it becomes more of a problem than it already is. What will the Tories do then? What will they do when it's too fucking late? That's right, absolutely nothing. Yeah, if you want to read this or any part of it out during the podcast, then you have my full permission. Thanks a lot for helping my mental health as much as a podcast fucking could. Now, Just think about that for a minute. This is a 17-year-old lad. And if you're 17 and you've got a life that you fairly enjoy and it's, you know, it's not that bad, and that initial lockdown can drive you to the point where you're trying to kill yourself in the middle of a city centre. Think about the people who, if a second shutdown comes, are going to lose their job. And, you know, they've got an ex-wife or an ex-husband and they've got kids who are dependent on them and they can't cope with the fact that they can't afford to provide child support or anything like that anymore. What I'm saying is, this young lad has come forward. He won't be the only one who's felt like that. He won't be the only one who's tried to end his own life. His situation is not the worst situation that people are going to be in. And he still got to the point where he felt like it was time to end it. And I don't see any help for people like this. I don't see any help for the people who are in relationships, in abusive relationships, men and women who get fucking battered when they're at home. I don't see any help for the people who've lost their jobs and don't see another avenue out. I don't see any help for the people who've got mortgages, like the new post-furlough scheme that got announced earlier today by Rishi Sunak, which is essentially, we're only going to top up the wages of people who are still in work. We're not going to keep paying for people whose jobs are no longer tenable. I don't see any help for these people. I don't see a way that the government are trying to look at this side of it. And you can't put the country, as far as I'm concerned, and again, I'm not an expert, I don't really know what I'm talking about. But I think it's important that I don't know what I'm talking about, and it's important that I haven't looked into it, because most people don't. Most people don't. And when we're talking about a whole country, you have to look at what most people are like. You have to look at working class people who are going to be fucked as a result of this, who are going to lose their jobs, and I've got kids as dependent on them who are getting their information the same way that I am, and the same way a lot of you do, which is from the bubble that they're in and from the echo chamber that they're in. And if I can't see a way for a 52-year-old man with a mortgage and a wife and a kid who's just lost his job, who's already got mental health issues, who's already struggled through the first 6 months of this year, who knows we're about to go into a recession and doesn't have a job, if I can't see how he's going to see the end of the tunnel, how can he? Because I'm in a very privileged position that I've got this and I've got him and I've got my best mate and I work with them all and I've got a good life. And that email made me cry. I imagine a lot of you listening to it, are upset by that. A 17-year-old. I don't. If the government are going to put us into a second lockdown, they need to think about this. They need to think about the people who aren't going to see a way out. What are they going to do? Where's the help?
And if journalism could fucking pull their socks up as well and start reporting things responsibly and not using clickbait when it comes to pandemics, viruses, and national lockdowns, because it generates an awful fear around it. People have already started panic buying toilet roll. You fucking morons. How can we be doing that again? And it's partly because of journalism. And there are some good journalists out there. But for the love of fuck, can we stop saying that 50,000 people have died from COVID? Because that isn't true. They've died with COVID.
Or after a positive test.
So COVID is in this, it's not the cause of death. And it all generates this awful whirlwind of fear. And then we're back in the same place, panic buying. And also people using literally looking around going, well, there was the lockdown, so there should be a lockdown. We need to, as adults, go, hang on, well, what's right and what's wrong? Rather than just being people are dying, we need to lock down. Do we? Do we? And what point of a government does a government need to be challenged? I'm not an anti-masker. I've worn my mask everywhere. I'm all for restrictions. I literally, the restrictions in shopping, in bars, in restaurants, if that needs to happen, social distancing and masks, fine. But you've got to let people trade. You've got to let people earn. You've got to let people live their lives. because if you take all of these away, it's not just stopping a virus, it's taking away a support system of people's existence, old people, vulnerable people, just young people who aren't in a setup that they want to be in. Kids in flats in London who are with like abusive alcoholic parents. Locking it all down is such an easy fucking option when you are a wealthy owner of a 5-bedroom property with a big fat fucking garden. It's not easy for everyone. Oh my God, I cannot believe we're even having this conversation.
And also, I know it's basically impossible to ask this with fucking politicians, but just be honest. Because you're just tying yourselves up in so many, and I say yous as if they're fucking watching this. They're tying themselves up in so much fucking hypocrisy and like contradictory fucking policies. Oh, do you know, we're all sick of them. You tweeted about it. The same jokes about, oh, well, yeah, COVID doesn't come out till 10 o'clock and that's why whatever. That's why everywhere's shutting at 10. That's fucking stupid, isn't it? I understand it. I get it. After 10 o'clock, people tend to be more drunk. They do. And that means they're going to mingle more and people are going to be kissing in nightclubs. And I get it. Come out and say that. Explain to people why you're putting these policies in place. Because to the layperson, to the people who don't look past the fucking headline, and every fucking journalist knows that that's how people work as well. And that's why clickbait articles work. Because people just look at the headline and go, that's a fact, and then you read the article and it's not. But so many people just read the headline. Tell people why you're doing this. We're shutting at 10 o'clock because we know after 10 o'clock people are more drunk and this and that and that. But then explain that outweighs the fact that at 10 o'clock now, every single person in the pub is going to be fighting for the same taxis, getting on the same fucking tube home, the same train home, the same bus home. It looks fucking stupid to all of us. It seems idiotic. And I'm very, very left-wing in political policy. I am. And I think I always will be. You know, I've been called a right-wing comedian before, which I think is hilarious just because I say things on stage that I don't mean that I think are funny.
Yeah, because your politics isn't your jokes.
No, it isn't, and it fucking shouldn't be.
People
Comedy
can't make the difference. People have watched this podcast and go, oh my God, are they alt-right? You're like, oh, fucking listen for more than 40 minutes.
The fucking great Dave Chappelle, who's just won an Emmy again for his stand-up special Sticks and Stones, comedy should get to be itself. Comedy is comedy. It's not a fucking political statement. Do you know what I mean?
This is.
But this isn't fucking comedy, is it?
If anyone's just picked up the podcast and just thought, well, I'll let them just talk waffle for 25 minutes, then I'll see how funny it gets. This one been more of a sort of a opinion-based piece.